Do you know the feeling that something is watching you, even when the room is empty? You glance at the dark glass of a screen, the tiny dot of a camera, a single painted iris in a hallway, and something deep in the body answers like it's hearing an old name. The eye is the first symbol we learn to draw when we want to say, "I am here." It is also the image we reach for when we want to say, "You are seen." Tonight, we descend into the long tunnel of this symbol, its birth in clay and myth, its march into cathedrals and currency, its survival in rings of cobalt glass on wrists by the water, and its cold rebirth in the senses that watch the modern city. If you've ever felt the gaze of an unseen witness, this is the map of where that feeling began. Long before writing learned to cast spells in ink, people in northern Mesopotamia were carving eyes out of stone. At Tel Brak, archaeologists found thousands of small figurines, simple oval heads with enormous almond eyes, pupil carved sharp, body almost an afterthought. They're called the eye idols, relics from around 3500 BCE. No mouths, no ears, just the gaze. They could have been offerings, stand-ins for petitioners, or a crowd of permanent witnesses in a sanctuary where mortals came to be seen by their gods. Imagine entering a temple where shelves of silent faces stare with single-minded devotion, each one a lens aimed back at the human heart. In a world without photography, this was humanity's first gallery of attention. In Egypt, the eye learned to bleed and heal. The Eye of Horus, the Wedjat, was born in a story of contest and restoration. Horus, falcon-headed, fought Set for the throne of Egypt, and in their war, the eye of the falcon was torn apart. Thoth, the scribe of the gods, patiently reassembled it, and the restored eye became the talisman of wholeness. Egyptian scribes used parts of the eye to represent fractional measures. Each lash and curve matched to a fraction. 1/2, a quarter, an eighth, smaller and smaller pieces that add to everything except a sliver of absence. 63/64. According to later interpreters, that missing fragment hinted that perfection lives one breath beyond what the world can hold, that healing is powerful yet never total while we wear a body. The Egyptians had another gaze as well, the Eye of Ra, bright as the sun and dangerous as sovereignty. Sometimes the eye was personified as a goddess who rages and protects, an emissary sent across the world to punish the wicked and gather the faithful. The eyes of gods were not just organs. They were agents, moving through story like arrows of judgment or beams of sight, restoring order. To wear the eye on a pendant was not only to seek protection, it was to carry a warning for anything that would harm you. You are seen. Across the Mediterranean, the eye turned blue and became a simple circle, a bead. The Greek mati and the Turkish Nazar were born from a belief older than city walls, that a glance can wound. The evil eye is not just a curse, it's the suspicion that attention itself has weight, that envy or malice can travel along a line of sight. So we mirrored the gaze. We carried eyes to meet eyes, bright discs of glass over doors and cradles, stitched eyes into woven charms, painted them on boats so the vessels would see the safe path home. On islands where the sea is a tempered god, even the waves seem to understand a compact. Eye meets eye, and the harm dissolves in the exchange. The eye fanned out beyond the sea lanes. In the Himalayas, stupas wear pairs of calm, heavy-lidded eyes facing the cardinal directions, the all-seeing gaze of awakened mind. Between the brows, where many traditions place the soul's interior sight, a mark floats like a question the world keeps answering. In the high deserts and mountains of the Americas, the Huichol weavers stretch colored yarn in a diamond pattern they call an ojo de Dios, the eye of God, an emblem of care and protection made to mark a child's life. And in Hebrew poetry, An older truth flickers. The eyes of the Lord range through the earth, not as bugging devices in the clouds, but as the living attention that holds the covenant between creation and the one who called it good. If the ancients made eyes to meet the divine, others made eyes to meet each other in power. In the late Renaissance, painters began to include an eye within a triangle, an old-world geometry of sight framed by the three-pointed symbol of the Christian Trinity. The Eye of Providence was a way to say that history is not a blind accident, it is observed, weighed, and guided. When the United States adopted the Great Seal in 1782, they placed that eye above an unfinished pyramid, a sign of something building toward completion under a higher gaze. The eye was never invented by secret societies. It was a common Christian symbol. But because it is older than that, and because eyes return where power gathers, later fraternities, including Masonic tradition, also used it as a sign of watchful ethics and duty. Symbols are roads used by many travelers. They do not belong to one alone. A myth, even more intimate than history, anchors this sign. In traditions of mysticism, the eye becomes inward and singular. Yogic texts locate a center between the brows called ajna, the command point, the place of interior authority. In Sufi poetry, the Ayn al-Qalb, the eye of the heart, drinks the light behind appearances. In early Christian sayings traditions, echoed by the Gospel of Thomas, there is a line about the eye being single or clear, filling the whole body with light. This does not mean being simple-minded. It means the integration of attention, an eye not pulled apart by fear or distraction, seeing the unity of what it beholds. To open the third eye is to learn a discipline, to let attention become a quiet sun that does not burn what it loves. But symbols do not stay in monasteries. They descend staircases into cities. In the 19th century, Jeremy Bentham imagined the panopticon, a circular prison with a watchtower at the center. The guard might be looking at you, or they might not, but your behavior changes because you cannot know. Michel Foucault later used the panopticon as a metaphor for how societies teach us to internalize the gaze of authority. We become our own watchers. An eye's power lies not only in what it sees, but in what it makes us do when we suspect we are being seen. There is a psychology of this, and it is not all myth. Experiments have shown that pictures of eyes placed above a tip jar or a breakroom honesty box can increase contributions and reduce petty theft. The effect is small and not perfectly reliable across studies, but the pattern whispers something the eye idols already knew. The image of an observer can nudge us toward our better selves. We are a species that grew in the light of communal regard, and the hint of a gaze still tightens the thread. In story, the eye can be villain or guardian. Think of the Eye of Sauron, a lidless, burning witness whose very sight is a weapon. Or of the saint's icon, eyes too wide to be merely human, painted open to eternity. In pulp and pop, the triangle eye sprouts in secret society posters, on currency, in music videos, a shorthand for power behind the curtain. It is easy to laugh, easy to fear, harder to ask what we are really pointing to. The ache we have to believe that the world has a mind, that even our hidden minutes add up to a story someone can read. Meanwhile, the eye in the triangle quietly turned into logos. In 1951, a network unveiled the CBS Eye, a black iris inside a white oval, inspired by American folk art and old emblematic drawings. Advertising understood that a simple eye could cut through the noise of a crowded street. It wasn't witchcraft, it was biology meeting design. We look for faces, we look for eyes, we can't help it. And so the symbol keeps working century to century because it plugs into a port in the human brain that never changed. I want to pause here at the threshold where myth meets your screen. If this kind of descent into symbols speaks to you, If following the eye from temples and deserts to banknotes and cameras wakes up the part of you that wants to connect old stories with modern shadows, subscribe and stay with us. New episodes arrive from the same dark corridor every week. Now, let's press further into the iris. One of the strangest properties of the eye as symbol is how it holds opposites, protective and predatory, wound and medicine. The evil eye will strike a harvest with blight, say some villagers. The Nazar will guard a newborn's sleep, say others. The single eye of mystical clarity promises inner freedom, while the surveillance eye of the city threatens to pin you to a board like a butterfly. How can one sign contain this much contradiction and not break? Part of the answer is that the eye is not an invented metaphor. It is a concrete thing that happens in your nervous system when you feel a tension. Your pupils change, your posture tightens, your mind moves differently. From there, culture builds palaces. Jung would have said the eye is an archetype, a deep structure of the psyche that takes on clothing from local myth but remains recognizably itself. We dream eyes without needing to learn them. We cover or uncover them to send precise messages. Eyes open mean life in art. Closed means death or sleep. To gouge an eye in a tragic play, to blind a hero like Oedipus, is to announce a truth, that seeing sometimes only begins when light is removed. In the oldest stories, seeing does not mean understanding. The watchers in the Book of Enoch, those angels who observe the earth, do not remain passive. They fall, they teach forbidden arts, they step across a boundary they were supposed to merely look at. In Revelation, living creatures around the throne are full of eyes, within and without, sight piled on sight. Attention so intense, it becomes a quality of being. You can read that image as terror or as comfort. Either way, the ancient imagination keeps telling us that seeing is the threshold of power, and that crossing thresholds has a cost. The cost in our time is different, but rhymes with the old. We live under a forest of lenses, traffic cameras blinking red with insistent memory, phone cameras always a breath away, doorbells that beam strangers' faces into clouds of data. The eye is no longer a bead on a string, it is a network. Certain logos with eyes don't just refer to meaning, they now connect to a pipeline of attention measured and sold. You scroll through a feed with tiny numbers telling you how many eyes have visited your thoughts. Who is watching whom? The symbol flips like a coin. We hold it and are held by it, yet the symbol also remains tender, stubbornly personal. In Mediterranean markets, children still choose blue glass eyes that flash in the sun. In tattoo studios, lines curl into tearfully beautiful Hamza palms with a single iris in the center, an ancient ward now turned into a personal vow. I will guard my boundaries. I will remember a story older than my skin. In Buddhist sites, the Buddha eyes look down, never accusing, always patient, and you get the sense that the real gaze here is not about catching you in a mistake, but about calling you out of sleep. Let's return to that Egyptian fraction for a moment, because it contains a secret about how symbols grow. The pieces of the Eye of Horus, assigned to slices of a whole, add up to a near-perfect sum with a sliver missing. Scribes might have used the eye shape to record measures of grain and beer. Priests might have used it to preach restoration. Healers might have used it to seal a bandage with meaning. None of these interpretations cancel the others. They assemble around a core just as Thoth assembled the eye. The symbol itself is the process of restoration, everything we know reaching toward what we mean, but never catching all of it. The last 64th is the silence that makes a myth sing. Modern thinkers of the gaze add their own shard. Jacques Lacan wrote that the gaze is not just a look you give, it is an event that happens when you realize you are an object in someone else's field. That shock, that displacement, is part of what makes the eye uncanny. An eye painted on a wall can create that feeling for a heartbeat. A camera's red dot can sustain it for an hour. A government's or corporation's databases can extend it to a lifetime. But it is also true that a child who knows someone sees them with love survives better than a child who does not. The eye's dark and light potentials both spring from the same source. Attention is a kind of nourishment, and like fire, it cooks and it burns. In the archive of human images, I love the ones where an eye is composed of impossible things. A flock of birds wheeling into an iris, a storm seen from space shaped like a pupil, a window cut into a stone shaped as a gaze. These artworks are not accidents. They confess the truth that all eyes are composites, matter and meaning, fear and wish. The all-seeing eye is not an alien machine looking in at us. It is the mirror of our collective hunger to be seen rightly and our anxiety that the seer may be cruel. So what happens if we refuse the panic and choose to use the symbol as medicine, as the Egyptians did? The next time you see the eye in a triangle perched above a pyramid on a dollar bill, notice the unfinished top courses of stone and ask what you are still building under the gaze of the ideals you claim. The next time you pass a stupa with painted eyes, notice if your breathing changes, if some muscle you didn't know you were clenching releases a fraction. When you put on a bracelet against the evil eye, remember that protection is not only about repelling harm. It is about cleaning your own gaze, so you do not become the arrow that wounds someone else's harvest. And if the symbol is used to sell things, if a brand places an eye where you cannot help but look, respond with your own quiet ritual. Look back. Ask what is being asked of your attention and whether the exchange is worth it. In a world of harvested gaze, the old magic is consent. We began with an empty room and the feeling of being watched. We end with the knowledge that the watcher is often the one we invited in. The eye as symbol is a declaration and a promise that sight matters, that witness matters, that healing is possible but never final, that hidden things will meet daylight, that we are seen and are seeing. Perhaps that is why, even now, in the age of algorithms and infrared, we still paint eyes on boats, still pass glass discs to newborns, still carve triangles into lintels, still whisper to the gods that we are here. Not because the symbol itself will save us, but because in learning its story, we learn how to hold our own attention like a bright, patient sun. Look at the world. Let it look back. Between those two acts, something sacred survives.